Have you ever responded to a place that doesn't show up on the map? I don't mean a dead GPS signal or a new street that hasn't been updated yet. I mean a full address, numbers, street name, everything called in over the dispatch radio, and when you try to look it up, nothing. No listing, no records, no one you ask has ever heard of it. And yet there it is, plain as day, spoken like it's always been there. I've been carrying this inside me for the last 11 months. Tried to tell myself it was a mistake, a fluke, but some nights I still wake up sweating, heart pounding, half expecting that call to come through again. The address that shouldn't exist. My name is Linda Hawthorne. I'm 39 years old, and I've worked as a paramedic in the town of Duxbury, Vermont for nearly 12 years now. It's a quiet, forested town, about 8,000 people. Most of them old mill families. We know each other. We know every street, every dirt path, every house that gets snowed in, every January like clockwork. This story happened during my first week back on duty after taking leave. I'd been out for months, recovery from a line of duty injury. I was still nervous, still shaky, if I'm honest, but I needed to be back in the rig, back on calls, back to something real. What I didn't know was that my first shift back would take me to a place no one should ever have entered. It started with a dispatch, just a routine call. Chest pains reported at 1321 Ashmill Lane. Only, Ashmill Lane doesn't exist. We checked the database, nothing. Tried the GPS, it froze. My partner Danny and I even radioed back to confirm the address, 1321 Ashmill Lane. They repeat, calm, certain, like it was just another street in our sleepy little town. But I swear to you there is no Ashmill Lane in Duxbury, there never has been. And that night, we went anyway, and we found it. Or maybe, it found it. Duxbury isn't the kind of town that shows up on most maps unless you're looking for it. Surrounded by dense woods, framed by hills that feel like they've been watching for centuries. There's something still and old about this place, not ancient in a historical sense. More like spiritually heavy, like the ground remembers things people have tried to forget. We have one hospital, Duxbury Regional, and one EMS station tucked behind the firehouse. The kind of setup where everyone shares lockers, knows your dog's name, and you can tell who's on shift by the truck parked out front. It was a Thursday night, late spring, but the air had that lingering bite like winter hadn't fully let go yet. My partner for the evening was Danny Prescott. We'd known each other for years. He's a lifer, tough as nails, former Army medic, the kind of guy who doesn't scare easy. And that night, even he looked pale when we tried entering the address into the GPS, and it glitched. Screen turned blue for a few seconds before restarting with no data pull. We drove anyway, using the general direction the dispatcher gave us. North end of town, near old timber roads. We took a route through areas I hadn't been through in a long time. It was all trees and silence out there. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the kind where your ears ring because the world's holding its breath. And then, we saw it. Ashmill Lane. There was no road sign, just a gravel turnoff with two leaning fence posts, as if something had once been mounted between them. The trees parted just enough to show a narrow road, swallowed on either side by overgrown brush and hanging branches. We almost passed it by, but when we paused to radio back for clarity, the channel went to static. Not silence, not a bad signal, just that low, wet hiss like something breathing through the line. Danny looked at me, I nodded. We turned in. The road wound through thickets of pine and birch, everything getting darker, even though it was only 8. The headlights barely pushed the shadows back, and something about the trees felt wrong, like they leaned too close, like they weren't just growing there, but reaching. After about a mile and a half, the road widened into what used to be a clearing. There, standing crooked among overgrown grass and wild vines, was the house. A 2-story farmhouse, with white, peeling siding, and a sagging front porch. The windows were dark, no lights, no movement, but the porch swing was rocking, slowly, no wind, just that steady creak, back and forth. We pulled the rig up to the edge of the clearing and killed the lights. You ever been out here before? I asked Danny. He shook his head. I didn't think this road existed. We grabbed our gear, headed toward the house. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not just from the weight of the bag, but from something else, something thick in the air. The smell was the first thing I noticed. Old dust, wet wood, and something else, faint but distinct, like iron, like blood. I remember thinking the house didn't look abandoned exactly. It looked paused, like someone had just stepped out and never returned. The mailbox had fresh spiderwebs. but the front steps weren't completely caked in debris. One of the porch boards groaned loudly under my foot, like it was announcing us. Danny knocked. No answer. Dispatch had said chest pains, male, mid-50s, no further information. Danny reached for the door. Wait, I said, listen. At first, nothing. Then barely audible came a creaking from inside. Not footsteps, not movement. It was rhythmic, like a chair rocking, or maybe something swinging from a ceiling beam. Danny opened the door, the hinges squealed, and we stepped into the gloom. The air was colder inside, stale, the kind of cold that doesn't feel like temperature, it feels like memory, like the room is remembering something awful, and you're just interrupting it. The entryway was narrow, wallpaper peeling like dead skin. A staircase rose to our left, completely swallowed in shadow. Straight ahead, a hallway led toward the back. To the right, a doorway into the living room. We called out again. Emergency medical services, if you can hear us, call out. Nothing. I glanced down at the dispatch tablet, still dead, battery at 100%, but no signal, no data, nothing. Just a pulsing blue dot in the center of a blank grid. We stepped deeper into the house. There was furniture, covered in sheets, a coat rack with a single long coat hanging, mustard yellow, stained near the cuffs, a photograph in a dusty frame, half shattered on the floor. I bent to pick it up, brushing the glass aside. It was a family portrait, faded, a man, a woman, and a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, but all their eyes were scratched out, not burned or faded, scratched, deep, deliberate gouges where the faces should have been. Linda, Danny said behind me, his voice low, do you hear that? And then I heard it too, a thump from upstairs, then another, slow, steady, like someone walking, but dragging something behind them. We should have left. We should have walked out and radioed it in and left that place behind, but we didn't. We climbed the stairs. The staircase groaned under our boots, each step announcing us louder than we wanted. The walls were close, almost too close, and the banister felt damp under my glove, like it had been sweating. There was no electricity, no visible light, but the upper floor was bathed in a faint gray glow, leaking through a cracked window at the end of the hallway. And the air felt wrong. It wasn't just cold, it was off, like walking into a walk-in freezer that hadn't been opened in years. I could see my breath fog in front of my face, curling into the gloom. My shoulders tensed. Danny kept glancing over his shoulder, like he expected something to be behind us. And I don't blame him. I felt it too. The hallway was narrow, lined with closed doors. One was ajar, a bedroom, it looked like. We passed a framed painting on the wall, crooked. I reached to straighten it. Why, I don't know, maybe instinct, but when I did, it shifted on its own, just a tiny tilt, like it was pulling away from my hand. I stepped back fast, pulse jumping. Did you see that? I whispered. Danny didn't answer. He was staring at the door at the far end of the hall, the one just barely open. A soft tapping sound came from inside, rhythmic, too even to be natural, too soft to be mechanical, like fingernails against wood. We approached carefully, our radios useless, and our sense of direction unraveling by the minute. I called out again. This is EMS. If you're inside and need help, say something. No response. I pushed the door open. It was a child's room, frozen in time. Tiny bed with a quilt covered in faded cartoon animals, toys on the floor, thick with dust, dolls lined up on a shelf, all facing the same direction. The door, their plastic eyes seemed darker in the low light, clouded, watching, and then the smell hit me, sweet, rot, like old fruit and something decaying beneath it. In the corner of the room was an old rocking horse, pale wood, painted eyes, and it was moving, just slightly, back and forth, rocking with a rhythm that didn't match the floorboards, the wind, or our breathing. Danny raised his flashlight toward it, but the light dimmed the moment it hit the horse, like the shadows drank it. Then we both heard it, whispers, soft, right in our ears. Not from the room, not from outside, but inside our head, like someone pressing their lips to the edge of your thoughts. Linda, Danny said, his voice tight. We need to go, now. But we didn't move. Not right away, because at that moment the temperature plummeted. The breath froze in my lungs, and in the reflection of the cracked window, I saw something. Not clearly, just a shape, a figure, standing right behind us. But when I spun around, the room was empty. No sign of movement. No sound, except the tapping. still coming from somewhere. It wasn't the rocking horse that had stopped. It was coming from behind the wall. Danny moved toward it, ran his gloved hand over the peeling wallpaper, tapped once. The reply came instantly, 2 knocks, hollow, measured. "Is there a crawl space?" he asked. I didn't answer because my eyes had landed on a drawing on the child's desk. Crayon on brittle paper, a stick figure family. Father, mother and child, but drawn in black, all black, no faces. The child stood in the center, smiling. Above her, scrawled in childish print, were the words, "We live where no one should." Then our pagers buzzed, sharp and loud in the silence. But not with a call, just a string of numbers. 21. The address didn't just not exist, it was never meant to. And we just stepped over a line no one was ever supposed to cross. We left that room fast. Down the hallway. Boots pounding. Breathing sharp. I don't even remember walking down the stairs. Just the sensation of the walls pressing in. The creak of the house echoing like laughter. When we got outside, the night felt wrong. Still cold, still silent, but flat, like we'd stepped out of something alive and into something hollow. Danny wanted to leave. I did too. But as we reached the rig, something made me stop. The house was behind us. Quiet. Watching. And something was gnawing at my brain, like a splinter buried under skin. That drawing. That message. We live where no one should. I looked at Danny. "Something's not right," I said. He stared at me. "We've got no patient, no call history, no address. That place isn't even." "I know," I interrupted. "That's why I want to know what it is." Back at the station, I should have filed a report. We should have flagged the incident, followed protocol, but I didn't. I couldn't. I knew no one would believe us. And honestly, I wasn't even sure I believed what had happened. So I started digging. First I checked our call logs. Nothing. No record of any call to 1321 Ashmill Lane. No audio dispatch. No timestamp. The system showed a clean gap between 8:32 and 9:27 p.m. As if that whole hour had just vanished. False trail? Maybe. A prank? A fluke? That's what I told myself at first, until I checked our onboard dashcam. I downloaded the footage onto my laptop. Hands shaking, convinced we'd see nothing but trees and empty road, but the footage was there. Grainy, flickering, but clear enough to see the house, the porch, the swing still moving. And just before we entered, right before we opened the door, a shadow moved across the camera. Low, crawling, fast. I paused it frame by frame. It didn't make sense. The shape wasn't upright. It wasn't human. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered, and then I saw, in one frame, just one. You can see the child's face from the drawing, that same hollow smile, black crayon eyes, except this time the face was real. The next day, I asked around. I went to the town records office, asked if there had ever been an Ashmill Lane. The clerk, Bev, sweet woman in her 60s, gave me a funny look. "Where'd you hear that name?" "It came up on a call," I said, trying to sound casual. She blinked. "That street doesn't exist anymore, was condemned in the 70s. "What happened?" "Fire. Whole development burned, never rebuilt. The records were sealed. Something about insurance fraud, property disputes. I don't really know." She lowered her voice. "But people said it was cursed. Kids went missing. There was a house where folks swore they saw lights flickering years after it was destroyed. Some said you could still hear someone calling for help from the woods. Was there ever a 1321? She hesitated. "That was the Beaumont place, I think. Husband, wife, little girl. They were never found after the fire. Some say they weren't home. Others say," she trailed off. "Look, you didn't go there, did you?" I didn't answer. She stared at me for a long time, then slid a manila folder across the counter. "Take this, but bring it back." Inside were old property maps, scorched, scanned copies, and there it was, Ashmill Lane, parcel number 11321, and under the notes column, someone had scribbled in pencil, "Do not list." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the house, about how it felt away, like we hadn't just stumbled into something. We'd triggered it. I opened the folder again, went through every page, and found something I hadn't noticed before. A handwritten letter, paper thin and faded, dated October 9th. "To whom it may concern. This house must not be rebuilt. The land is wrong. It holds on to what should pass through. My daughter is still there. I hear her at night. Don't go looking. Don't answer when she calls. She doesn't know she's dead." No signature, No return address. Just one final line at the bottom, scrawled in red ink. She lives in the walls now. By the third night, the house had followed me home. Not physically, obviously, but in dreams. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that hallway. Wood groaning under my feet, breath clouding in front of me. I could hear the whispering, that same quiet tapping behind the walls, and always I could see her. The little girl. She never moved, just stood in the doorway of her room. That half-rotten doll hanging from one hand. Her face nothing but a blur, like a smear of ash in the shape of a child. And yet somehow, I knew she was watching me. That next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Danny. Have you had the dreams? He was silent for a beat. Then yeah, every night, same one. I keep waking up at 3:17. Me too. That time, 3:17 a.m. It felt familiar. I searched our dispatch logs again. Nothing. But I remembered something Bev had said at records. The fire in Ashmill Lane happened in the 70s. So I checked the archives. Duxbury's town library has this locked case. Old local newspapers, microfilm, real dust on your hands history. I spent hours combing through editions from 1974, trying to find anything on the Beaumonts. And I did. October 19, 1974. Fire claims home in Ashmill subdivision. No survivors. The article was brief, dry. A family of 3 believed to be inside at the time. Samuel and Judith Beaumont and their daughter Clara. No bodies recovered. Cause of fire undetermined. But what made my skin crawl was the photo. A shot of the house mid-burn, smoke pouring from shattered windows. In the upstairs window, center of the second floor, was a figure. Small, watching. I took a picture with my phone, zoomed in. It wasn't clear. But the shape was wrong. Too still, too clean in the middle of all that chaos. Like it wasn't in the fire, but watching it. I checked more papers. No funeral notices. No obits. No follow-ups. Just one final update a week later. Property deemed hazardous. Address removed from municipal records. Erased. I called Bev again. Asked her if she remembered the Beaumonts personally. Her voice on the other end dropped low. Samuel Beaumont wasn't just some guy. He was a paramedic. My blood ran cold. He worked your same job, same station. 30 years before you. I hung up the phone without another word. That night, I went back to the station. Pulled out the old logs. Dusty boxes in the back of the supply closet that no one touches anymore. Yellowed paper. Fading ink. I found his file. Beaumont, Samuel. EMT. Joined 19. There was a final incident report, barely legible, water damaged and missing chunks of text. But enough remained to piece something together. He had made a call, a 911 response, to a home with an address that did not match county zoning. Ashmill Lane. And get this. He filed that call himself, but dispatch had no record of sending it. He went anyway. No partner, against protocol. 3 days later, the house burned down. The official report said electrical fire, but in Beaumont's last handwritten note, clipped to the file, he'd scribbled a message barely visible through the smoke stains. She's not ours. We brought her in, but she's not a child. She knows things. We made a mistake. It watches from the walls. We shouldn't have let her in. I sat in the station break room for a long time, just staring at those words. The man who died in that house had been me. Not literally, but my role. My station. My shift. And now I was living out his final days. Dreaming the same dreams. Following the same trail. We weren't just called to a cursed house. We were repeating history. And the worst part, no one remembered. No one ever remembered. Except the thing in the walls. I didn't sleep after that. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that little girl in the smoke frozen in the upstairs window while the house burned around her. But it wasn't the fire that haunted me. It was the look she gave me. Not fear, not pain. Recognition. Like she knew me. Like she'd seen me before. I started obsessing. I'll admit that now. I stopped taking shifts. Told dispatch I had lingering symptoms from my injury. Technically true. Just not the kind they were thinking. I spent days in the archives, piecing together everything I could on the Beaumont family, and on Ashmill Lane. But every trail ended the same way. Nothing. Every article, every record, every file stopped abruptly, around October 19th. It was like the entire street had been scrubbed from history. But there was something else. Something I hadn't expected. In a box marked EMS personnel retired deceased. I found a folder labeled simply Incident 74A. It shouldn't have been there. These boxes were only for employment files, evaluations, disciplinary actions, That kind of thing. Inside the folder was a typed report, half burned at the edges, pages brittle with age, and stapled to the front, a faded Polaroid. I stopped breathing. It was a photo of a group of medics, black uniforms, stamped with the Duxbury seal. 5 people, 3 men, 2 women, all smiling. One of them was Samuel Beaumont, but another one looked just like Danny. Not similar, identical, same face, same jawline, same scar over the eyebrow. It didn't make sense. The photo was dated 1971. I stared at it, trying to rationalize. Maybe a relative, maybe a coincidence. But no, I knew that look. That was Danny. I took the photo to him that night, showed it without a word. His face went pale. He didn't deny it, didn't even blink. I knew you'd find it, he said, his voice low. I was hoping it wouldn't get that far. I stood there, stunned. What are you talking about? He took the photo from my hand, stared at it for a long moment, then sat down heavily on the bench in the locker room. I don't know how to explain this, he said. I don't even really understand it myself, but I've been here before. What do you mean? I've worked this job before. I remember parts of it, names, calls, places, but it all comes back in flashes, like memories that aren't mine, but they feel real. Sometimes I'll be driving and suddenly I know what's around the next turn before we get there. I know a patient's name before they tell me. I've chalked it up to déjà vu, instinct, experience, but then, Ashmill Lane happened. His hands were shaking. That house, he whispered. It wakes something up in me, something old, like I've seen it burn before, like I've run up those stairs in another life. I didn't know what to say. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear his words. I think we're caught in something, he said, something bigger than either of us, and it's not the first time. I sat down across from him, my voice barely audible. You think it's repeating? I think it's feeding. He looked up at me. Every generation someone gets called in, someone like you, someone like me. We're drawn to it. The house pulls us in, makes us watch, makes us remember. I opened my mouth to speak, but then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Just one line. She's waiting for you. I showed Danny. He stared at the message, jaw tight. We can't keep running from this. I nodded slowly, then we go, but deep down I knew, we weren't going back to confront anything. We were going back to finish what someone else had started. We didn't tell anyone. Not dispatch, not the captain. Not even Bev. This wasn't just about uncovering a buried truth anymore. This was about ending it. Whatever it really was. Danny and I returned to Ashmill Lane the next night. We didn't speak much during the drive. The forest swallowed our headlights again. The GPS still refused to function, and the road was exactly as we remembered, unnaturally narrow, unnaturally dark, and far too quiet. When we reached the clearing, the house stood there, waiting. But this time, it was different. The porch light was on, not flickering, not dim, on bright and steady. And I swear to you, the swing had stopped moving. We stepped out of the rig and I immediately felt it, a shift. Like the air itself was aware of us. Not watching, expecting. We didn't bring gear, no kits, no defibrillator, no stretcher, just flashlights, gloves, and a growing sense that we were about to break something open that had been festering far too long. The front door was already cracked open. We stepped inside and the house welcomed us like it remembered. The same smell, dust, mold, something metallic, but the temperature, warmer this time, clammy, like a fevered breath. The hallway looked the same. So did the staircase, but now, the living room door was open, revealing more than I remembered. A large old mirror hung over the fireplace, covered in soot, cracked down the middle, and on the mantel, a series of framed photos all blacked out, except for one, a photo of the Beaumont family. Only this time, Clara's face wasn't scratched out, it stared directly into the lens, and someone had written in thick, dark marker across the glass, "Do not remember." Danny and I exchanged a glance. He said nothing, just walked toward the stairs, and I followed. As we reached the second floor, the air shifted again. Every door was now open, every room exactly as we'd seen before, but hollowed out, emptied, except the child's room. The rocking horse was gone. And in its place, in the center of the room, stood something I can barely describe, a shape, human, but wrong, draped in what looked like rotted muslin, standing perfectly still, at its feet a circle of old black candles, unlit, burnt low, and pinned to the wall above it, a note, "Only those who forget survive." Then, everything changed. The air snapped cold, and every candle on the floor ignited at once. A deep humming started from within the walls. The floor beneath us trembled, and then the whispers returned, not inside my head this time. All around us. I turned toward the hallway, and there she was. Clara, standing just beyond the doorway, half shadow, half light. Her dress was scorched at the hem, her skin gray and cracked, like old porcelain, and her eyes, they weren't human, not black, not red, just empty, like they'd been scooped out and replaced with something that could still see. She didn't move, didn't blink, but she spoke. Her voice came from the walls, not her mouth. "You remember me now," she whispered. Danny backed toward the wall, flashlight shaking. "I remember," I said, breath catching. "You were never supposed to be found." "No," she said, "I was never supposed to leave." She stepped forward, and the room rippled, like heat off asphalt. Time buckled. I saw flashes, images, other responders, other lives, firemen, medics, police. People entering the house over the years, always alone, always drawn by something they thought was a call for help, and always disappearing. "They keep sending you back," Clara said. "They think they're helping, but they're feeding me." Danny grabbed my arm. "We have to go, now." But I couldn't move, because something had just clicked into place. The seal, the suppression, the blackout on records, the missing logs, the sealed fire files, the address that didn't exist. It wasn't just the house protecting itself. It was the town. Someone, or something, had made a deal. Let the house stand. Let her remain. As long as no one disturbed it. A sacrifice, to keep whatever Clara had become from getting out. Danny was yelling. The candles flared. The mirror downstairs shattered. The walls groaned, as if the whole house was inhaling at once. Then Clara said, "Now that you know, you have to choose." Everything in that house tightened air. Time even thought. It was like gravity had shifted. Like something deep beneath the floorboards had just opened its eyes. The candles on the floor flared higher, casting warped shadows that twisted like they were alive. And Clara stepped forward again. She wasn't a child anymore. Not exactly. The more I looked, the more her form bled at the edges, hair thinning into smoke, arms too long, face flickering between that of a little girl and something ancient, wretched. Her voice was in my head now, bypassing my ears entirely. "They always run," she said. "They always forget, but you're different. You see me." I fell to my knees. Not from fear, not entirely. From weight, like something heavy had wrapped itself around my chest and started pulling. I could feel memories being pushed into me, memories that weren't mine. Other responders, other Lindas, other Dannys, over decades, maybe longer. Each of them called here. Each of them offered up sacrifices. And now it was our turn. Danny was trying to pull me up, shouting my name, but it all felt distant, like I was underwater. My vision tunneled. The girl Clara reached out a hand. "You don't have to forget," she said. "Stay, I'll show you everything." And for a moment, I wanted to, not because I was bewitched or possessed, but because the weight of truth, the full truth, was too much to carry alone. My thoughts weren't my own anymore. I was seeing faces I'd never met, streets I'd never walked, fires that burned long before I was born. And somewhere deep in the house's impossible memory, I saw a room that looked exactly like mine. My apartment, my mirror, my clothes hanging in the corner. And standing in the doorway was me. I screamed. It snapped the world back into focus. I tore myself away from the vision, crawling backward across the room. My hand landed on something solid, an old iron candle holder. Without thinking, I hurled it at the wall behind Clara. The drywall exploded inward, revealing the crawl space where we'd once heard the tapping, and what I saw made me vomit. Inside were bodies, not skeletal remains, preserved, EMS uniforms, fire jackets, dispatch polos, dozens of them, eyes open, mouths slack, like they were still alive when the wall took them. Danny froze behind me. "Oh my God, she keeps them," I choked out. "She keeps us." Then Clara screamed. Not a sound, not exactly. A pressure wave, an anguish so deep it shattered the nearest window, sent pictures flying off the walls. My ears rang, blood trickled from my nose, and in that instant, I understood. She wasn't born in that house, she was made. The town had buried something out here long before the Beaumonts ever moved in. Clara had just been the first to touch it, an innocent girl consumed by something older, something that couldn't die. And when the fire came, it didn't end anything, it only fed her, and now she wanted company. Danny pulled me to my feet, yelling over the ringing, "Linda, decide." That was the moment, the irreversible choice. Stay, and become part of it. Add my name to the wall. Let her show me all the things no one was meant to see. Or, burn it down. Really burn it down. "Gas line," I muttered, coughing blood. "There's a tank under the house. Old line, from when it was built." Danny looked at me, eyes wide. "You sure?" "No." But it's our turn, right? Let's not repeat it this time. We ran, down the stairs, through the hall, past the fireplace, and the photographs that now all showed our faces. Danny kicked open the basement door. The line was there, rusty, ancient, but intact. He looked at me. If we do this, there's no walking away. I know. I struck the flare, and Clara screamed again.